Hey there, I'm Cyrex. I'm sure that during your daily scrolls through the internet, you come across images like this. What do you feel when you see these kind of images? Uneasiness. Maybe a weird sense of familiar discomfort, right? Today, we are going to talk about the famous liminal spaces. Sounds weird? Don't worry, I'll explain it. By now, you probably also heard of the backrooms. Yeah, the backrooms. That bizarre dimension everyone talks about it like actually exists. And maybe you watch some super deep explanatory video or play a shitty ass Roblox game about it. Like, bro, why do I have a fucking gold minigun with them? And look, I know the backrooms are kind of overdone at this point, but that doesn't mean they aren't still interesting. In fact, they are a perfect example of how liminal spaces can be downright terrifying. So, what do the backrooms have to do with liminal spaces? Well, the backrooms are a great example of how liminal spaces can get under your skin. Imagine a place that feels like a never-ending maze, filled with identical rooms, endless corridors, and that damn constant buzzing of fluorescent lights. It's the kind of place where your mind feels trapped, where every corner seems to lead to more of the same, and what's worse, where you're not sure if you're alone or if something's watching you. But it's not just about the backrooms. There's a reason these places give us the creeps, and it's not just because they remind us of some weird ass video game.
Bruh.
The science behind why these spaces are so uncomfortable is pretty interesting. It has to do with how our brains process the familiar and the strange at the same time. Let's dive into the psychology of fear and see what really scares us about these spaces. Alright, so what exactly are these liminal spaces that we're talking about? It's basically the space between two states of being, like that weird space between wakefulness and sleep, or that awkward time after you graduated but before you find a job like me right now. But in physical terms, liminal spaces are places that feel like they're in a constant state of transition. Places that are meant to be passed through, not stay in. Think about an empty school hallway at night, or an abandoned mall. They are places that aren't really meant to be occupied, which is why they feel so off. But why do these places creep us out so much? Well, psychologists, like this freaky cat that I made with AI, they suggest that liminal spaces trigger a part of our brain that's wired to detect danger. Let me put you an example. It's kind of like when you hear a twig snap in a dark forest.
Hello.
Your brain immediately goes into overdrive, trying to figure out if it's just the wind or something else.
Oh my god.
With liminal spaces, our brains are trying to make sense of the familiar and the unfamiliar at the same time. Like, your brain knows what a school hallways looks like, but when it's completely empty and the lights are flickering, your brain is confused. But it's not just the fear that these places evoke. There's also a strange sense of nostalgia. Yeah, nostalgia. Word, right? I mean, think about it. Have you ever seen a picture of an old playground, all empty and covered in fog? And suddenly you're hit with this weird ass mix of childhood memories and dread. It's because these places remind us of times and places from our past, but with a twist. They are not quite right. They're like a memory that you know is wrong, but you can't quite figure out why. And that's what makes them so damn compelling. And let's not forget how these spaces have made their way into pop culture. Ever notice how many horror movies and games use liminal spaces to freak us out? The Shining, with those endless hotel hallways, Silent Hill with its creepy fog-filled streets, even Inception with its impossible dreamlike architecture. They all tap into that unsettling feeling of being in a place that's both familiar and not. Safe yet dangerous. And it works, because these spaces tap into something deep in our psyche. A place where the rules of reality are bent, where our sense of safety is challenged, and where our imaginations run wild. I remember as a kid being obsessed with video games. One of my all-time favorites was Garry's Mod. But here's the strange part. I remember spending hours in that game, mostly by myself. And one map in particular always gave me this strange feeling. GM Construct. If you ever played it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. As soon as you spawn into that map, the feeling of liminality hits you like a ton of bricks. You're in this massive open area, surrounded by empty, dark structures. It is like you are completely alone in this vast terrain. But there is this nagging feeling that maybe, just maybe, you are not. Playing there alone was unsettling, to say the least. I wasn't just afraid of what might be lurking in the shadows or hiding in those dark corners. I was also terrified of the vastness of the map itself. That feeling of being alone, with endless empty space ahead of you, not knowing what else might be out there. It was eerie. But let's go back to the point. Despite these feelings, why are we so drawn to liminal spaces? Why do we keep coming back to them, even though they make us feel uneasy? Maybe it's because, deep down, we're fascinated by the known. Liminal spaces are like the edge of a cliff. They represent a boundary between what we know and what we don't. Or maybe it's because they remind us of our own moments of transition, times in our lives when we were in between childhood and adulthood, between jobs, between relationships. In a way, by exploring these spaces, we are also exploring ourselves, our fears, our memories, our hopes. And that's why, no matter how creepy they are, we can't help but be fascinated by them. I'm Cyrex. Bye.